Hello, hi, and welcome to episode number 32 of an Italian knitting podcast. My name is Francesca. I'm an Italian knitter, and like every single episode of this podcast, this one will also start with the usual disclaimer of I haven't recorded an episode in a while, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. But it is true. I don't think I've filmed in the last 2 months, so this episode will be filled with quite a lot of things. So I think we should just jump in and go through the things that I finished and the things that I started since we last spoke. First of all, the poppy tee by PetiteKnit, but made into a sweater. And you've seen this before in the last episode, and it was really almost complete. I had done already the ribbing on the sleeves and the body as well, and I just had to bind off, I think. Yeah, I think I even blocked it while still on hold on those barber cords, I think they're called, and so that I could actually see if I like the length of the sleeves and the body before actually binding off, which is something I do anyway with a lot of my sweaters. I do put them on hold when they're like just about done, just the bind off missing. I block them so that I can see how much they actually stretch, and I try them on before binding off so that I can adjust and like frog a few rows and add a few centimeters maybe. And I just want to be sure that whenever I do a bind off, I don't have to unpick it, like frog the bind off, because that's been a nightmare for me, and I know you can relate if that ever happened to you, to have to like unpick a bind off, especially if it's like a sewn bind off. So that's what I've done for this sweater as well. So I did put on hold, like you've seen in the last episode. I blocked it, waited for it to dry, try it on again, and I actually had to frog a little bit of the sleeves before binding off. And for the body, I think actually I added a couple of centimeters. So I adjusted, and then I did a tubular bind off. I think it's my favorite bind off for sweaters. I don't know if it's true, but like it is kind of stretchy enough, but looks good enough. This is the tubular bind off, is the one where you do 2 rounds of double knitting and do the sewn bind off at the end with your regular sewing needle. And for this project, I've 100% followed the poppy tee pattern by PetiteKnit with one modification only, which is that I made it a long sleeve garment. The rate of the decreases was kind of a little bit eyeballed, so I think decreased every 6 or 7 rounds. I have it on my Ravelry page if you ever want to kind of replicate the look of the poppy sweater, I guess we could call it. But other than that, I kept kind of the row of pearls around the neckline and the cuffs. I kept like the 1x1 ribbing. I liked it enough. I kept like all the rest of the details. I really like the shoulders here, the look of the shoulders. There's a little bit of a kind of a seam looking kind of thing in there, which I really like. Kind of, it's very polished, very classic. And the other thing that I've done in regards to this pattern is that I sized up 2 sizes. So I'm typically like either an extra small or small, let's say small, in PetiteKnit patterns. But this time I picked size L, so large, so 2 sizes up. And I did so because I wanted some positive ease, because I wanted the garment to look like a sweater and not like a tee, like a fitted tee with long sleeves. I actually wanted positive ease in the body of the sweater, so I think it worked out well. The reason why I chose a tee, like a t-shirt pattern, and made it into kind of a sweater looking garment is because at the time I didn't find another sweater that was made with the same yarn. This is the lovely Cardiff Cashmere Classic, which is like super soft. However, it's a sport weight yarn, which I think they recommend you knit on like 23 stitches per 10 centimeters gauge. And I find that's not a super popular gauge for sweaters. I think there are a lot of them, a lot of patterns that call for like 20 to 21 stitches per 10 centimeters on a DK weight type of yarn, either like fingering plus mohair or just one strand of DK. But I couldn't find a lot of patterns that called for like 23 stitches per 10 centimeters, so like a denser gauge, which would be more appropriate for this yarn. And so I just went to the poppy tee pattern and altered it, I guess, like made modifications. I'm not definitely the first one to be attempting this. Knitterina has a lovely video walkthrough on YouTube of her process of taking the poppy tee and made it into a long sleeves poppy sweater. She totally inspired me and I followed her lead. I knew that it could be done, so I just did it. She actually modified the pattern quite a lot more, like with a 2x2 ribbing, a split hem. I think she maybe omitted the purl row as well, so she went even beyond the basic modification of just lengthening the sleeves. I kept it simpler in terms of modifications, but anyway, this is totally doable. So if you do want to do the same, please go ahead, you have my blessing and you'll be totally fine. Since I've knitted this, or since I've decided to knit this, I've seen a couple more sweaters that call for Cardiff Cashmere Classic, or anyway like a gauge of 23 stitches per 10 centimeters. One of them is the Bruno sweater by PetiteKnit. And I think if I ever buy another sweater quantity of the Cardiff Cashmere Classic, I will pick that pattern. It is very much an oversized look, but also has like twisted rib and I think quite long cuffs, if I remember correctly. So I don't know, I like the slightly different look than this one maybe. In the end, I'm pretty happy with the color. Little backstory on this color is that when I ordered this sweater quantity, I really meant to be ordering it in Sudan, which is a kind of warm caramelly color. And I wanted to order a hat quantity, so I guess like a couple of bowls of this light blue. But as you can see, I swapped the two colors. So I ended up ordering a sweater quantity in the light blue and just a hat quantity in the Sudan, like the warm caramelly brown. And so I was a little bit disappointed at the beginning, but then I made the most of it and I embraced the light blue color for the garment or the sweater. And although I feel like this is maybe less elegant of a color choice, it makes it for more of a kind of chill, everyday, cozy, simple looking sweater. I've wore it already 3 or 4 times since I finished it. It has not started like properly pilling, but I feel like it might do a little bit of pilling in the near future and I'll have to kind of shave it a little bit. It is a very, very soft yarn, so I don't think there's any chance that it won't pill, but I'll just fix it. Other than that, something that also comes to mind is that I really like the construction of the sweater. This doesn't have any short rows anywhere. Not to raise the neckline a little bit higher than the front, not on the sleeves to kind of provide a little bit of a curve here. No short rows ever, which I guess also means that you don't have any of those like little holes that sometimes you create in your fabric whenever you turn, especially for myself, I guess, but like I'm not super neat whenever I do a German short row or I guess a short row in general. And sometimes you can see a little bit of a hole in the fabric, or like a little bit of a space. So if you don't have any short rows, you kind of avoid that issue. But more so, short rows are not very fun, right? Like you have to kind of turn your fabric to like pull on the yarn. It's not comfortable, right? Like it's not fun to knit. I would rather kind of just knit either flat or in the round. So this sweater gives you the chance to skip any short rows. It's very straightforward. You knit like a couple of panels, like the back and then a little bit of the front. You connect, you join the round and you go. It's like not a lot of picking up stitches, no short rows. So I would love to knit this pattern or similar patterns again. I think this is called like European shoulder whenever you do this kind of construction. So while I don't think I would actually knit a poppy tee because I don't think I love it in its short sleeve form. Like, I don't know if I like kind of a fitted shirt with that kind of structured, tailored shoulder that much, but I think I might have to in the future do another kind of long sleeve, oversized version, kind of in the form of a sweater. I'm actually quite surprised that PetiteKnit doesn't have a poppy sweater just with exactly the same instructions of like whatever I've done, so just poppy tee but long sleeves and with more ease. I don't know, but you can totally do it yourself if you do like the look of this one. The yarn is for sure 100% recommended. It's so much more expensive than other yarns that I've knitted with. For this specific project, I think I paid kind of like double the amount of money that I typically pay for sweaters that I knit on. I think we're talking about 140 euros, something like that. It sometimes goes on sale on some websites. I'll link the website that I used down below. And I think it's like maybe 140 for size L, which is this size that you're looking at. So I would say it's kind of like a special treat if you want to go for it, but worth it for me, in my opinion, so far. Cool. Second finished object is a giant scarf. This is the Berlin scarf by Paulastrickt, and I've knitted it in CaMaRose Snefnug. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'll put it on the screen, of course. And this is a giant, cozy statement scarf. This is how I would call it, right? Like a statement scarf. It is very chunky, very big. I have been wearing it every day whenever I go out, I guess. You can wear it more like kind of draped a little bit, open like this, or you can definitely kind of wrap it around. So I'll keep it just draped for the time being. I'll keep it like this, very stylish. The worst part about this scarf are the fringes. As in, like, I love the look of them. I think they're like very chunky, very big. They add to the scarf, to the character of the scarf, but the actual knitting process is a little bit long and a little bit boring. These are like kind of chunky I-cords, and yeah, they're not very fun to knit on. They're very mindless though, so you can work on the fringe while you do something else, like you're watching a TV show, watching YouTube or something that kind of distracts you from the boringness of the I-cord. So do that and you'll get it done in a couple of sittings. I don't think the CaMaRose Snefnug was the exact yarn recommended in the pattern, but I think any blown yarn, so is it called blown? I think so. Like any like very fluffy, lightweight yarn that's kind of traps the air and makes it very cozy and soft fabric would be perfect. So it doesn't you don't actually have to choose whatever yarn is recommended in the pattern. I think even drops air, which is quite affordable. I have some in stash, so I was thinking about kind of making another version of this scarf. Kind of has the same texture, very soft and airy, so that could be a good alternative. And I don't know if you can see, but this is a tube, a stockinette tube. So I think it kind of gives you a scarf that it's very, very mindless to knit on, because you just knit in the round forever for the entire length of the scarf, but it's not garter stitch, right? Because I feel like whenever you think about like mindless scarf, you think about just knit every row, but like flat, which would produce like your regular kind of garter stitch fabric, which I do love, but I do have quite some, like a good amount of neck accessories that are in garter stitch. So this, even though it's like very easy to produce, it gives you like a little bit of a different look than what you might already have. So yeah, would recommend it. And the only thing that you need to pay attention to is how much yarn you use for the fringes, so that whenever you do the first set of fringes, let's say on this end of the scarf, then you need to remember to leave the same amount for the other set of fringes. So you can do the first ones and then finish the length of your scarf and just have enough yarn left to knit the second set of fringes. I'm mentioning this because what I have done is I've done the first ones and then I thought I had wrote down exactly the amount of grams that I needed. But then for some reason, whenever it was time for me to work on the second set of fringes, I either couldn't find the place where I noted down the grams that I would need for the second set, or maybe I wrote it down but I read it wrong. I don't know. Anyway, what I've done is like I started working on the fringes when it was too soon. So like in the end, after finishing the scarf itself, like the entirety, including the fringes, I had yarn left over, which it's not a big deal, but I guess it's not ideal, right? Like when you do a project, especially like a scarf where you don't need precise measurements, I feel like you want to use the entire yarn available that you have so that you're done, you're good, you check off, no leftovers, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, didn't work out for me this time. I didn't have the heart to undo the fringes and then add that extra little bit of length and then redo the fringes. I would never have done that. I don't think you should do that if it happens to you either. So what I've done is I made a little bow. This is the December bow by PetiteKnit. I didn't really know what to do with this little ball of yarn. I think it was about like 15 grams or so, maybe 10. And so I think I just had this little pattern. Someone had gifted it to me and I just kind of tried to make a bow. For this bow, what you do is you do kind of like a teeny tiny strip of fabric and then you fold it and kind of in a way that makes it like a bow shape. I'm sure there are tutorials even on YouTube, like free tutorials that kind of guide you to make this type of bow. So I don't think you have to buy a pattern, but I just had it laying around. And this little bow lives on my daughter's bed. I don't even know where it is. It's kind of somewhere like hanging like next to my daughter in her bed, kind of as a decoration, as a Christmassy decoration. It's not super Christmassy in terms of the colors, but why not? It's a bow, right? Like it doesn't have to have a specific color. So I don't know. She likes it. I think she likes more the fact that I made it for her more than how much she likes like a brownish bow. I think she just, I don't know, really like when she looks at this, it just like reminds her that I made it for her as a decoration. So win-win. I didn't have to, I don't know, keep a little bowl of leftover yarn around and she gets like a bow that reminds her of her mom. Anyway, I'll return it to her room in a little bit. I just put a little string of sock yarn that I had somewhere in this room. You can make something prettier for sure to hang this bow somewhere. I just did this. On to another, I guess, second neck accessory that I have worked on and then I finished. This is a giant, an Italian bandana, which is definitely not the size of a regular bandana, is more of the size of like a giant shawl. Maybe not a giant shawl, but like a full-size shawl. It's longer than my wingspan. How do you call it? Yeah, anyway, it's a full-size shawl. However, I did use an Italian bandana pattern to make it, and the Italian bandana, I have a regular size sample here. So this is kind of the regular size, I guess the bandana size that you can tie around your neck or in your hair. And I just use the same pattern and just continue working on it until I finished my yarn. And the construction is very simple. You start casting on a very few stitches and then you increase and you work some eyelets. You don't have to. I like eyelets, so I put them in the pattern. I also put them in this version. This is yarn that I had left over from a cardigan, like an open cardigan with no buttons that I test knit a couple of years ago. And I had bought extra yarn because I wanted to add sleeves to the open cardigan. But in the end, I really like that cardigan as is, as like a layering piece that maybe I put on whenever I already have a sweater underneath. So I really don't need the cardigan to have sleeves as well, because I typically already have kind of sleeves from a sweater underneath that. I just use it as like an extra cozy layer on top. So it works very well without sleeves, and I don't want to add them onto the cardigan. And the yarn that I had was the Drops Flora, which is a fingering weight, and I had the Drops Mohair, Kid Silk Mohair. I think that's just the name. And what I have chosen to do here is I've chosen to kind of alternate sections. So I would do like a section before the eyelets in like the fingering, and then another section between eyelets in one strand of mohair, and then again the same. At some point I got bored and frustrated to be knitting with just one strand of mohair, and I do have a section here, actually two sections at the bottom. There are two stranded mohair, so like two strands of mohair, which you can kind of see, I don't know actually if you can, but like you can see that the one strand of mohair sections are more transparent and translucent, and these ones are kind of more dense. So I just kind of mix and match. And at the beginning for the yarn, I wanted to go for like hats. So I wanted to make hats because I like hats. I don't have a lot of them, but I have realized that I've become a little bit of a mohair snob. So this is the Drops Mohair, and after trying a few other mohairs, for example, the Knitting for Olive one or the Filcolana Tilia one, I've realized that this mohair, when I sweat, like when I get warm, my skin gets warm, it tingles me a little bit. It's not itchy at all, but like I can feel it on my forehead. So I felt like if I were to make hats, I would, I don't know, notice the presence of the hat on my forehead due to the mohair. And so I was like, I don't need to make hats. Like I can make hats with other yarn that I have or that I will buy. So I was like, okay, I'll just go for a cozy shawl. This green, as you can imagine, if you've been here before, is one of my favorite colors. And so I feel like this is a very good choice for using my leftover yarn. It's also quite like a sizable quantity of yarn. I think it was like 3 balls of the mohair and 3 balls of the fingering weight yarn. So if you have the same quantity or even less, you can definitely do a good size shawl. This is quite like an open gauge. So that's why you can get away with not a lot of yarn to make a very big shawl. As you can imagine, this is very easy to knit on its garter. You have some increases and some eyelets, but very easy. So if you are looking for a free pattern to do something similar, this is the An Italian Bandana by myself. Last official finished object that I have is a hat. So as I mentioned before, I wanted to make some more hats. I don't have enough of them, I feel like, compared to the number of sweaters that I own. Like I think I have like 10, 12, 15 sweaters and maybe like 1 hat. So this is my second hat. I'll try it on for you. This is so soft. This yarn is Nocciole by Wolle, Italian yarn, a kind of small producer, and they have lots of different colors. I have another colorway in my acquisition section that you'll see after, but this is just like kind of, I think, the most boring color that they have. I don't know why I picked it. I felt like I saw it and I was like, yes, this could be a very basic, staple, classic accessory. So I'm not mad about it. It just like, maybe it looks a little bit boring. This though, it's the lovely ribbed hat by Purl Soho. The only other hat that I've made and then I still have is also a lovely ribbed hat by Purl Soho. It's so lovely. It's 2x2 ribbing, which means that if by any chance don't really guess exactly the right circumference for the hat, for like the person that you're knitting with, being you or someone else, the 2x2 ribbing makes it like adjustable in the sense that like it can fit a smaller head, a slightly smaller head, or like a slightly bigger head, right? Because it's stretchy enough that it's, yeah, I guess it's stretchy. Why am I trying to explain what stretchy means, right? Like it accommodates different sizes of heads. You can make it a little bit more like kind of with more room on the top. This, I think it's fairly fitted. I don't have a lot of room here, but fits me well. So this is a free pattern, so it's also easy if you just want to try it. Try to see if you like it, knit a few centimeters. If you don't like it, just like scrap it and pick something else. But I do like it, and I plan to knit another one. I think the same pattern, since now I know what like the size that works well for me, and I know that I like kind of the construction, so I am gonna be knitting another one, I think hopefully before the end of the year. Okay, and last but also least, in the sense that it's not the most exciting finished object, but I do want to show it just for fun. It is this. I am calling it like a blanket for my daughter's stuffed animals. This is like its current use case. My daughter is using it as like a kind of, yeah, a blanket for her stuffed animals and plushies and stuff. But how this came to be is that I went to a workshop at my local yarn store, and I went there to learn Tunisian crochet. So Tunisian crochet is kind of, I think, that kind of hybrid craft in between like knitting and crochet, where you have a hook, so that in that sense looks like crochet, but it's a very long hook, or maybe like a hook but with a cord attached, so that you can actually mount stitches on that hook and cord, which then kind of suggests more like knitting, because you have like stitches mounted on the actual kind of tool that you're using. And then you also, I guess, bind them off and then you pick them up again, like crochet. So it's a hybrid. I don't know if you've ever seen videos on Instagram or I guess on YouTube as well, where people kind of work with Tunisian crochet. Anyway, if I felt it was a good fit for me. I've always heard that it's a good kind of crochet approach, I guess approach to crochet for people who really like knitting. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it. It's at my local yarn store. It was also a very fun afternoon of like just tea, like having a little bit of a snack and chatting with other people while we learned this new craft. So it was very fun. And the thing though is that I ended up not really liking Tunisian crochet. Well, I guess I didn't fall in love with it like I hoped or expected to. So I used the kind of an hour and a half of the workshop to really learn, try, ask questions. And I mean, I think it was cool, but I do remember thinking like, okay, I feel like I still like knitting more than this. So I was like, okay, I'm glad I tried, but didn't fall in love with the craft. And the teacher, though, is a crochet enthusiast, like a crochet primarily. Her craft is crochet. And so she was like, oh, we have at least like an hour or 40 minutes left in the workshop. So let me also teach you crochet with like regular crochet. So not the Tunisian version, right? And so she taught me kind of the basic stitches. I made a few swatches, and when I got home, I just looked for different tutorials for crochet, and I feel like granny squares were really like the big deal in terms of like crochet projects for beginners. So I was like, I'll try that. And what I ended up doing with the yarn that they provided for me at the workshop is like 4 granny squares. They look exactly the same in terms of kind of how they're made, just they have different colors because the yarn is not a gradient, but like it just kind of variegated in this way. This is the Tropical Lane Madrid. It's 75% acrylic. So I ended up having these 4 separate squares, like granny squares that I crocheted just for fun to learn crochet. And at some point my daughter was like, I would really need a blanket for my dolls or like, I don't know, animals. And it was like, ta-da, like a little light bulb. I was like, I have just the thing. I just sewed together these 4 squares and called it a day. So at least these 4 squares, which are, to be honest, in colors that are not something that I would wear as a scarf or anything, right? Like this, I don't know, there's too much going on. And so I'm glad that they're not kind of laying around in my room, but they can actually be used. And my daughter likes this fun mix of colors, so she really likes this. And again, she likes the fact that her mom made it for her and her animals. Bottom line is that I do like knitting above all else, but in terms of crochet crafts, I think regular crochet, I think appeals to me more than Tunisian crochet. So I was surprised by that, and I think I will try crochet bags for the summer. I know that you can make bags with like tote bags style with granny squares, but also other stitches. So I feel like it could be fun. It also works out much faster than if you were to knit such blanket, and also uses up a lot more yarn. Goes very quickly, and it's, I think, very fun. I liked really learning another skill, another craft on top of knitting. So I don't know, I feel like it's fun. I'm glad that I tried. Like if you're a knitter and you are interested in crochet, I think you can totally try. Just like look at like YouTube tutorial and you'll be fine, I think. I think the fact that I already knit made learning crochet much easier. Even at the workshop, when I said like, I don't know anything about crochet, I can only do the crochet chain that I do when I do the provisional cast on for knitting. So I really started from zero in terms of crochet, but the fact that you already know how to make stitches in knitting and like read your fabric and know what like a stitch even is, I think makes learning crochet much simpler and faster than if you were to just pick up a crochet hook without not having knit before. So anyway, I guess what I wanted to say is like if you do like crochet, never tried it before, you can totally do that. Just pick a YouTube video. I will leave the link to the granny square tutorial that I used. And this concludes our finished objects. Apologies for this change in lighting, but I felt like it was gonna be too bright, so I kind of adjusted my shades, but we'll see. Welcome to the works in progress section of this episode. First work in progress that I have is a test knit. It's missing a collar, like a neckline, so I feel like it looks a little bit weird, a little bit open. Like please picture like a nice ribbed collar here and you'll be fine. This is the Sandro Pullover test knit by Flaminia. She's knitting Flam here on YouTube. She has a podcast as well. She's also Italian like me. And this is my first cabled garment. I've done like I think a couple of cabled projects. They were headbands and they were like really tiny, and I felt like the cables were a little bit fiddly for me. So I was like, I don't think I'll ever do a cabled project in the near future or the long-term future either. But whenever I saw Flaminia coming out with the test call for this sweater, I felt like this was my perfect cabled sweater because the cables are the simplest they can be ever, I think. They are all kind of twisted in the same direction. So all the cabled columns, can we call them cable columns? Sure. Are kind of twisted in the same way. And they even have like a regular stockinette column, or I guess a mini panel here in between them. So it's not that they kind of are back to back or anything. And it's like, I think the simplest cable project or cable sweater that one could really desire. So I was like, okay, I do like the look of this. It's not busy with cables at all. It looks simple enough to make. And this also, has the same European shoulder construction that I am wearing in my kind of puppy sweater, right? Like this slanting shoulder look, like shoulder seams kind of. The construction also was like fairly straightforward. The cables were very straightforward up until now, at least. I don't foresee them becoming more difficult for the sleeves or anything, so I'm very happy. I think this is like maybe a couple of weeks worth of knitting, so it went by fairly fast. I'm using Double Sunday by Snefnug. I think this is one of my favorite yarns. It's so soft. The fact that it's so soft also makes it more prone to pilling, so like you might have to shave it a little bit more often than you would if you had like a sweater with more hair, which for me, I guess, doesn't peel ever. So this, I think I might have to de-peel it once a year or maybe twice a year for sure. Depends how much I'll wear it, but I guess, yeah. Just a note, so Snefnug, they have lots of beautiful colors. I have another project, I guess other two projects that use Snefnug Double Sunday, so you'll see them. This is probably the most boring color that you can find, but it is a lovely kind of like off-white, very basic. I feel like the cables shine and are really visible, and I don't have a cream-colored sweater. Going very well so far. I think the pattern had a couple of things that testers kind of spotted, and they were like, oh, maybe we can clarify this, fix this, make this a little bit better, but nothing major. None of us had to like frog big sections and like, I don't know, start again or anything. So it's going very smoothly. And yeah, I love test knits. I really like them. I haven't done one in a while because they require you to commit to a specific deadline. Of course, nothing major happens if you don't really finish the test knit in the required time frame. Like, it's okay, right? Life happens. If you didn't finish, you didn't finish. Like, just I didn't want to commit to test knits in a kind of a busy season of life. So I don't know. I feel like now I'm back. I have my things together and like I can dedicate some knitting time to test knits, and I should be well off making this deadline. I should finish it in time. Looking forward to see this finished. I think today or tomorrow I'll work on the neckline so that it looks a little bit more kind of finished. Second work in progress is my Advent project. I have not been like a big yarn Advent fan in my life. I started last year. I really fell in love with opening like little packages with like mini skeins of yarn every day in December. And so I did it again this year, as in I got myself a yarn Advent calendar this year as well. I'll show you the packages that I have left. This is kind of how they look like. This is tomorrow's. And I have the Snailyarn Advent calendar. She's Valentina. She's an Italian hand dyer. I really like to support Italian brands, I guess, whenever I can. And I love her kind of color palette. These are just like a handful of them, like the most recent ones that I have not bowled up yet. What I'm doing currently with this Advent is I am coming up with kind of like squares. This is my current plan. And I'm saying current plan because I had like a failed attempt of an Advent project, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. But what I'm making is this kind of little, not little, but like square where I have like the mini skeins, like the first 6 mini skeins in this triangle. And then I'll close it up with just like plain cream white fingering weight yarn, so that I'll have a square where like half of it is like colorful and like with a little fade of 6 mini skeins, and the second kind of triangle that makes up the square is kind of like a more boring color to kind of balance things out. And I plan to place 4 of these squares together, like sew them together to make up kind of like a square wrap. And yeah, so the 4 squares, I think I'll connect them with the colorful kind of triangles facing each other. I'll post a picture here of my kind of idea, my plan. And I don't know, I like it. I'll still make the 4 squares separately, and then I'll try to arrange them together and see whether my plan that I have in mind is the kind of the best outcome, or if I want to kind of place them in a different order. What I could also do is to place 4 squares like you would see in the sweet shop blanket, so like with the triangles, the colorful triangles not touching each other. I don't know. For now, the project consists in making these type of squares with 6 mini skeins each. So these are the first 6. I started kind of the second 6. I actually bolt them up together. I connect the mini skeins with magic knot and made a ball with 6 mini skeins, and these ones are like the first 4 mini skeins of the third triangle. So see, like the colors will kind of fade and shift. And with the last 6, I'll make the last quadrant of my kind of square wrap. I think this is a solid idea. I stand behind my plan and I'm looking forward to seeing it all completed. The original idea was actually to make a crochet shawl. I found a lovely looking pattern called intermission shawl and crochet pattern because I was kind of like on the high of having learned crochet and like having fun with it and kind of wanted to try this new craft. And I worked on the crochet shawl for at least like 10 days. So like I've used up at least like the first 10 mini skeins, and I loved so much the process of like just go with the hook and like, I don't know, alternate this crochet craft with my regular knitting craft and kind of just switch things up a little bit. But in the end, although it was so fun to work on, whenever I looked at the in progress shawl, I felt like it wasn't my style and I was not really gonna wear it. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll gift it to my mom or another relative or friend. But I feel like no one is really into crochet or crochet fabric to love unconditionally the thing that I was creating. And so I was like, okay, I tried, I'm happy I tried. Let's scrap everything. And so just like I frogged everything. Also very easy to frog crochet. You just, I guess it's like knitting as well. Like you just, there was no mohair or like 2 strands involved in the crochet project. So it was just very easy to frog and start again. Also, this is merino sock, which is again, very easy to frog. There's like the yarn is not sticky. It doesn't like lose fibers. So very easy to frog and start again. This is the story of my Advent project for this year. Last year, since I have it here, I'll show you. This is the blanket. Is it a blanket? Maybe. This is the project that I made last year with the Advent calendar from Snailyarn. Last year, the color palette was a little bit more kind of colorful and varied. And it was called the Color Wheel Advent calendar. So it was truly, I guess, like all the colors in the color wheel. Really liked it. Last year, as you can see, I didn't introduce a main color like I'm doing this year. Like this year, I'm adding like an extra yarn together with the yarn from the Advent calendar. But last year, I just used only the mini skeins and didn't add extra yarn. And it was still like a pretty sizable little thing. So I use this one as like kind of a little cover for my shoulders whenever I'm at a desk, or just for my legs. It's a very teeny tiny blanket. So by introducing this year like a main color, it means that kind of the final project will be a little bit bigger this year, not just the mini skeins. So I picture like a much bigger square blanket as my finished project for this year. Is it a project bag? Project basket is also something new. I picked it up at my grocery store 4 months ago. I like the muted colors and it's like stands so well, more so than if you were keeping your project into a project bag, which would kind of like flop on the floor. This one kind of stands and you can just put your project in it. I knit 99% of the time while I'm at home. So I don't actually need to put this project in a project bag and go about do things outside. So this is easy. If you also are a kind of a home knitter, like someone that knits solely or like almost exclusively at home, I would recommend something like this to hold your projects. I also have the big sister, I guess like the parent of this one. I don't know what I'm saying, but like I have the bigger version of the basket. This one has handles and has the Sandro Pullover test knit for now. A little basket family. Not much left for me to share with you in terms of works in progress. One thing that I have that it's like a little bit tangled, but it's also very matchy with the sweater that I'm wearing are some in progress little like mittens or gloves. These are the penny gloves by PetiteKnit. I am kind of knitting them 2 at the time, but not like you would knit like 2 at a time socks, maybe on the same long circular needle. I used to do that when I was a sock knitter many years ago. I don't do socks anymore. I don't like them anymore. So I'm kind of knitting them 2 at the time in the sense that I knit like a section on one and then kind of catch up with the other one, and then I'll do the same so that at the end they're kind of finished at the same time. I feel like that's a little bit more kind of motivating to keep up with them instead of finishing an entire one and then having to start from zero on the second one. I think it's a good tip if you are like a sock knitter or like whenever you need to do 2 things that are the same, I guess mittens, socks, that's it. I would recommend it. You would have to have like 2 needles to hold the 2 things that you're working on, but I think it's a sacrifice that it's worth it. So this is the kind of body. Is it called the body of the glove? Sure. But it's, I guess, the wrist. So it would be, I guess, here. And at some point now, I guess, I'll start increasing to make space for the thumb. And then the mittens are just like sleeveless, fingerless mitts. So I don't have to be bothered in actually knitting all the tubes for the fingers. It just like, it's cut off here. Very simple. I don't know if I really want this long of a cuff. So maybe I'll frog a little bit. Also, I don't know if I have enough yarn left to make the full length gloves like described in the pattern. So maybe it's a good idea. It's a win-win for me to like shorten the body, or I guess the cuffs a little bit so that I'm sure that I'll have enough to finish them. These, as you can imagine, are knitted in the leftover yarn that I had from the sweater that I'm wearing. I ordered originally 12 balls of Cardiff Cashmere Classic, and I only ended up using 10.6 balls maybe, so I have left 1.4 balls of yarn. I think they should be enough for this little mitten, so I'm not super worried, but maybe if I shorten the cuffs, I'll feel more relaxed and farther away from playing yarn chicken. But these are a gift knit. This will be my only gift knit for this year. I don't have a lot of people in my life that really truly love knitting and knitted things, I don't think. So I don't do a lot of gift knits, but this will be one of them. If I've not mentioned it before, but these are so easy. You just cast on, knit a tube up, do some increases, and then finish up. And then you just cast off. No ribbing, which is lovely. I really like kind of stocking it in the round over like working ribbing, like 1 by 1 or even 2 by 2, like having to switch from knits and to purls. So these are like to knit a dream. If you have some leftover yarn and you do want to make a gift knit or just a gift for yourself, so a gift knit for yourself, I think they are recommended. They look pretty good, easy to make, not a lot of yarn. Recommended so far. 2 things left in my works in progress queue, or I guess list of things to show you. Both of them are in Snefnug Double Sunday. This one is a very simple cowl, and it looks a little bit crinkly and wrinkly because I'm using frogged yarn without have washed the yarn to relax it. So I'm using it straight after frogging it. I do not care. I'll wash the cowl after and it looked good enough for my standards. This was a sweater which I really love the shape of, but I ended up making like a size too small, or maybe my gauge was too small and I didn't really wear the sweater because it was just not my preferred like kind of oversized fit, but I wanted to kind of make it back into something right away because I love the bright blue color. And so I just went for a simple cowl with no pattern. This is just 2x2 ribbing. I'll make it a little bit longer so that it's cozy and maybe you can kind of fold it even. I don't know. This one will be my second cowl that I own. I only have another one and actually have it here because I'm using it to check the size of this one. This I made so many years ago and I love it so much. It is so soft. The yarn is so soft. I'll put the name here. Is Woolstock Far. I don't remember. The cowl is kind of a fisherman's rib. It is from Purl Soho. You can see the columns of stitches of like the fisherman rib. You can also see how like used up and pilly it is because this is my only cowl and I use it a good amount of times. So it needed a companion, I guess. It needed another cowl to switch things up. This time I don't know, I didn't really care about the fisherman's rib pattern and I just went for 2x2 ribbing. No pattern, I just cast on some amount of stitches that seem to be making sense. And I think they seem pretty comparable. So I think I'm doing well. If for some reason this is too slouchy and I want it to be tighter, I can always kind of thread a little bit of elastic thread, like the same one that I sometimes use for the sweaters, like collars, like necklines, to keep them a little bit more cinched in. I can also thread around here. I have the elastic thread from PetiteKnit. Yeah, so I'll just knit a little bit more on this to get to like a good length. I have enough leftover yarn since this came from like a regular sweater, I guess, like a full-size sweater. I have enough also for my daughter, so I think I'll make her kind of a matchy cowl. Is it too much making like matchy accessories? I don't know. I don't know if I'll have more leftover yarn after the two cowls because I did kind of lose a little bit of yarn while frogging. Some of the hems and some of maybe the collar. So I should have enough though to also make a hat for her or some other accessories. So that I really want to use the entire kind of frogged yarn because I love this color, this kind of electric blue. Other than the fact that it looks a little bit frumpy and like wavy, I really like the project. It's so mindless. It's just 2x2 in a tube. And also, you stop whenever you want to stop. Really, there's no size that needs to be precise. So I would recommend either the Fisherman's Rib Cowl, the actual official pattern by Purl Soho, or just cast on some stitches and like knit them in a tube. Last work in progress, and also last work in progress that is made with Double Sunday, which seems to be kind of the yarn of this episode, I guess. But yeah, this is a much more kind of vibrant and maybe fun color. I guess it depends if you like this pink fuchsia bright colorway, but I mean, I quite like knitting on it. So it's like provides a little bit of a fun excitement on my needles. But I will not be wearing this one. This is for my daughter. It's actually kind of like a bigger size on her. This is a 5-year-old size and she's 4-year-old, and I intentionally picked a size that would be quite like roomy on her so that she can wear it next winter, maybe the following winter as well. I don't know. I really recommend this. Is again PetiteKnit. This is a very PetiteKnit and Double Sunday heavy episode. But this is the teddy bear sweater. The official pattern has like an embroidered little face of a bear in the front of the sweater. All the teddy bears sweaters that I've done for my daughter, I've never embroidered anything in the front, and I just used the plain pattern. I think it looks pretty good without the embroidery, especially if it's me that has to embroider. I'm not very precise and good at that, and I think this would be kind of the child version of the no frills sweater. Very kind of plain raglan. Yeah, so I'll finish the body and the sleeves, and maybe this will be ready for Christmas as well for her. Should be. She picked the yarn, so She knows that I'm working on this. Sometimes she sees me while I'm on the sofa and she's like, oh, is it almost done? And like she has tried it on for size, and I don't know, she's very excited about her like upcoming sweater. I feel like sometimes in the past I just made for her like things and kept them as a surprise. So like I would knit on them when she wasn't home, and I picked the yarn and the color for her and like gave it as like a finished object. But I've noticed that if she's part of the process of like picking the yarn and like choosing the look of what she was gonna get at the end and like see me work on it, she is more attached to the finished object if that happens, like if she's part of the process. So that's easier for me, right? If I can try things on her and she knows about it. So win for her. I think she's more, attached to the finished object, and it's easier for me because I can try it on her and I can knit on it whenever I want, even if she's home. So this is a gift knit, but the recipient knows that she will be gifted this. And we made it. We made it through the episode, the longest episode that you've ever seen. However, we're not done. I guess if you want to leave me, I can understand. You can move on from this video, but if you want to stick around for maybe like 5 more minutes, I have a little bit of an acquisition section, and it comes specifically from Knit Italia or Knit Italy. This is a yarn festival that took place in Florence, Italy in October, so like 2 months ago almost. And it is a kind of a weekend-long event, yarn festival with some vendors in a lovely kind of historical location. And there are also workshops, like knitting classes. I've taken a couple of them, were very fun. And I also came home with some yarn and I guess knitting related things. First of all, from Wool Done, this is Julia's shop. I got, finally, 2 balls of Nocciole by Wolle. This is the same yarn that I've used for the gray hat. However, this time I picked a much more satisfying color, I think. I've been eyeing this one. This is Zucca, pumpkin. So I've been eyeing this color for quite a while, and it will be a hat. I think it'll also be like the lovely ribbed hat by Purl Soho, but maybe I can try another pattern, but I think I'll be happy with like having another ribbed hat. This is a very autumny fall color. We are in the winter time, so it's a little bit past fall and autumn, but it doesn't matter. Still lovely. A bouquet of color here. This is Gli occhi del lupo, wolf's eyes. There's a wolf in the kind of the logo. And this is lace weight mohair. So it is truly like mohair, but it's like hand-dyed. And the color is so vibrant and colorful and fun. I couldn't resist. The teacher of one of the workshops that I attended was wearing this exact color, and it was so lovely. She had an oversized open gauge sweater. I found the pattern, so I think I'll just have to knit the same exact pattern that she was wearing, so like a complete copy, because same yarn, same color, same pattern, but I have to do it because it was stunning. It was a masterpiece, a piece of art. So this quantity should be enough for that like oversized kind of a open gauge, lightweight sweater. So it doesn't seem like much yarn for a sweater, but it should be. So I'm hopeful. Could be, I think, like a good springtime sweater, not too warm, like a single-stranded. So looking forward to this one becoming like an actual garment and not just a bouquet. And last acquisition, it's not yarn, but it's a knitting bag, project bag. This is Flora bag from La Piantalana. This is lovely. My bag also has a little pouch, lavender, like dried lavender pouch, which didn't come with the bag, but it was on the stand, like close to the bag. So I was like, ooh, I can combine them. And so that whenever I have my project in here, like it smells so good. Whenever you open it, you are embraced by this lovely fragrance. It felt like a good idea, and I'm happy that I combined them. And you can kind of even wear it on your shoulder and go about your outing outside. That will be it for real. You can actually leave, go on, move on with your day, and thank you for sticking around. I will put here at the end of this video also a couple of minutes footage that I've taken at Knit Italy or Knit Italia, just to kind of show you the vibe and how lovely the historical building that we were in was, and just like to show you all the colors and the market area. So I hope you enjoy that, and I'll see you in my next episode. Bye.